ball is dropped. It's gonna move. It'll be the Eagles' ball.
When we embarked on sharing the story of the Olney Eagles youth organization, we initially wanted to profile the current leadership, a group of tireless and dedicated volunteers who have devoted themselves to shepherding countless Philadelphia children and youth through organized sports for decades. Given the challenges faced by many of Philadelphia's Black and brown youth right now, we thought that this was a noble effort to showcase. But it should come as no surprise that delving into any aspect of a neighborhood as rich in history and stories as Olney's, it quickly becomes a complex, multi-layered endeavor. Since the Eagles became a Black-run organization in the late 1990s, they have endured and overcome their fair share of adversity, while remaining true to teaching sports and to imparting the social impact it can have on its young players. The heart of the Olney Eagles organization still beats strong for the hundreds of young people it serves annually. The impact is truly profound, as generations of children have grown to become adults who in turn have had their children join the extended family. We are honored to share a little bit of their story with you in this episode.
Yo, we've been out here, we've been practicing. Y'all should have some kind of breath. Yeah, a little in shape. Y'all shouldn't be so tired. There's enough of us who sub in and out. We went over our patterns, we went over defense. And we get ready to come out here and have some fun against these guys. Yo, who field is this? Who field is this? Who field is this? Listen, we must protect our own house. Alright? Alright, so make sure y'all do what y'all do and have fun out there, man. Everybody do their job. Everybody do their job. We're not gonna be, listen, if your teammates miss a ball or something like that, we're not gonna be pointing. We're not gonna do that. Clap it up for your teammate. That's all right. Just get it next time. All right. If we catch an interception, we can yell Mossy so that everybody know that we got the ball and we running back to make our touchdown. All right.
Once the traditional homeland of the Lenape indigenous peoples, the Olney section of Philadelphia has changed dramatically since Europeans colonized the region in the late 1700s. Its history reflects the rise and decline of industrialization during the last century, in tandem with waves of immigration and migration by families from various parts of the world. Each successive generation of arrivals have contributed their own cultural traditions to the community, while having to negotiate the complexities of coexisting with neighbors from different geographic origins. Olney crackles with the energy of this dichotomy. Today, Olney is a linguistic multicultural melting pot. Its evolution reveals the multi-layered narratives of its residents who bring their diverse lived experiences and resilience to this mostly blue-collar neighborhood. In the second season of our podcast, we will highlight some of those stories, from garden growers to at-home chefs, community activists to youth mentors, small business owners to entrepreneurial artists, and more. You'll hear their voices and witness their journeys as they continue to make Olney the dynamic place that it is. A production of Olney Culture Lab of Culture Trust Greater Philadelphia, in collaboration with Amber Art and Design, this is Audio Olney, a podcast exploring the beauty, complexity, and diversity of the Olney section of Philadelphia. Sit back and enjoy.
So we're on the Cobbs Creek Golf Course in West Philly. And today, being at the Cobbs Creek Golf Course, we wanted to talk a little bit and think a little bit about sports and the role that sports played in our lives and the role that sports plays in community, and particularly the role of sports in the Olney community. So here, we went to the Olney Eagles practice, and I was just wondering if you had any thoughts or any reactions, because I know you played football in high school and throughout much of your youth.
Seeing the practice the other night really brought back a lot of memories. There's a certain smell to a field too, and to like players in cleats and the bright lights of dark lit fall night in the Northeast really creates a special ambiance, you know, and it was really nice to see them and be a part of it. For us, growing up, we were a family that came from athletics. And so it's something to realize that everybody has their own individual speciality and genius. That genius is in some kind of physical activities or sports. And a lot of youth are grounded by their participation and continuance and commitment to the athletic regimen and schedule and everything that goes into being an athlete. It's something that's a salvation for a lot of families, for a lot of urban families, for a lot of youth that need this expenditure of energy. Growing up, not only had my parents' generation played sports, but most of my siblings had played sports too. So it wasn't that something that was expected, but it was something that was almost like a legacy commitment. And so we would go to events growing up, and you get the experience of being at that age, you know, what translates to almost like these celebrity moments amongst your peers. You go out and you perform on what is your highest level, but a lot of your social circle, a lot of your school is there watching you and cheering you on. So it becomes this very active, involved thing. But from a family perspective, not having a lot of resources growing up, this was something that for my mom was not only a safe outlet in terms of an after-school program, but something that ate up a lot of my free time, something that was able to expel all that loose energy, and where I came home at the end of the day and she would have food ready that I'd be worn out already, and something that supplied structure and a social circle that allowed me to flourish and create certain realms of identity, you know? And there's a lot that goes into that. And people like to joke about dumb jocks and this and that, but there's a lot of study and physical and mental commitment that allows you to be prepared to be an ongoing athlete year in and year out. And mentorship. There's a special relationship that happens with the coach. You are accountable in all your actions on the field and off the field, not only to your team, but also your coach. And when you do something like maybe party too much or get in trouble or have too many boyfriends or girlfriends or mess up in school, that word of mouth campaign circulates very quickly, and it immediately comes to your coach, and he's going to address you on your actions and behavior, and it relates on your ability to perform with the team and having access to perform with the team. And it's something that, again, grounds you and helps you develop really quality traits that affect you going through life. There's so many things of the human being that I am today, and the things and qualities that I've developed that I really only learned through sports. Watching the game, or the practice, I should say, it really brought back all these memories.
One new message.
Hi, my name is Frank McKee, and I'm calling regarding the Olney Eagles. I played the very first year, 1963 through 1965, for the 60, 65, and 75-pound team. I know the first year we played, we won the Interstate Conference Championship. We were undefeated. Are you happy to share that? 1963, good year. Take care.
When we decided to focus an episode of Audio Olney on the Eagles, it was initially with the intention of covering the organization since it became a Black-led one. When we put out a call for alumni to phone in their remembrances, we actually heard from a couple of players from way back. We just shared the voice of Frank McKee, who played the first year the Eagles started. The Olney Eagles youth organization has been around for 60 years. It was formed in 1963, when the neighborhood was predominantly German and Irish American. Olney Recreation Center was home base after it was built in 1957. and the organization has touched the lives of tens of thousands of children and youth since its inception. While they are primarily known for their football program, they also have basketball, cheerleading, and track and field. Over time, the Eagles as an organization has changed and evolved as the neighborhood has, first welcoming a few coaches of color in the 1970s who shared the same love of football and sports as their white counterparts. The relationship between the white and black staff wasn't always an easy one. There were different cultural practices and assumptions that, at times, made things challenging. However, serving the youth was a common denominator.
Eventually, the influx of non-white residents, particularly black residents, reached a tipping point in the neighborhood. This was reflected in the makeup of the Eagles staff and players as well. The Eagles had to endure the sudden migration of its white staff out of the Olney area. Known as white flight, this phenomenon has come up time and time again in various other interviews and encounters with residents, and it remains a big part of the broader Olney community's historical sense of itself. It is the primary marker that signifies the good old days for those who left versus those who moved in and still live here. We will delve into this topic in more depth at another time. For the Olney Eagles, white flight nearly buckled the organization. Those who were left holding the bags, as it were, and who at no small risk to their own financial well-being, dug the organization out of a hole to keep it viable and an asset to the neighborhood.
We will begin by introducing you to Coach Ed Hunley. His tenure covers almost 5 decades at this point, and he is the one person who epitomizes the legacy of the Olney Eagles. He is the current president of the board, and as he puts it, the de facto figurehead after having started off as a parent volunteer.
All right, I got involved around 1978. My son, he was 8, 9 years old, and we're looking for some place to play football. And my wife ran into a friend of ours in the supermarket, and we were going to Logan Cowboys, which is actually closer to us because we are actually in Logan. And she suggested the Olney Eagles, and so we went up there, and that started it all. And he went, he had the tryouts, and he made the team.
After a couple of years, Coach Ed was then asked to get more involved on the instructional side, first as an assistant coach.
Well, me and my wife were out there, with the supporting of our child all the time. And then when they used to play the games, I used to always hold the down marker every game because that put me closer to the field. And I held it so much for every game away and at home when they won a championship and they got jackets. And I got, they was like, what are you going to put your name beside my son's name and his number? It was YMH. And everybody couldn't figure out what those initials was. But it was actually stood for the yard marker holder. And that's what they used to laugh about when they called me that. I used to always hold the yard marker. So I just put those initials on my jacket. And after that season, after they see me being so involved, I was asked would I like to help out. So I started out helping out on defense as assistant coach with the 75-pounders. And that ran for about maybe 6-7 years as assistant coach.
Eventually, it was suggested that Coach Ed try out for a head coaching position, but rising in the ranks also meant coming into more conflict with the existing leadership.
I was changing coaches. I had like maybe two different head coaches during my time. And the one head coach, when he was going to leave, was telling me I should go for the head coaching position. But I was like, man, how y'all do that? Because we never went to none of the meetings at the beginning. We never went to none of the general meetings. It was still predominantly a white organization. So, and then a gentleman named Vern Winder, he was down there. He was there before I got there. And he the one that brought me in and told me, come on down to the meetings, man. You see what they doing. So then we started going to the meetings. And we would always laugh because we would always say they have 2 meetings. They had 1 meeting with us in there. And then when we leave, then they have a real meeting with them. So we'd always joke about it because they would never really tell us what was going on. We always get a little skim here, skim there. So next thing they know, they was asking me about being a head coach. But I had to run against a board of director. So it was me and a board of director. So it kind of got heated up. So their suggestion was, why don't you take the 65-pound team and let him have the 75-pound team? Everybody happy. But I told them, no, I went to 75 at that point about 8 years. I said, man, I've been here 8 years. I know this weight class. I don't want to go down. I don't know how they do down there. So they said, well, we're going to have to take a vote. And I'm like, well, y'all have to go ahead and take your vote. I wouldn't compromise. So they took their vote, and they voted the other guy in, you know what I mean, which didn't bother me because I was still, you know what I mean, going to be my parent as I was at this point. I was bringing a second son in, and they was getting kind of smacked around. Following year, long story short was, they was complaining about his season. So next year, when they put another letter in, and that's how I became the head coach of the 75-pound team.
While he was not the first black staff on the team, Coach Ed broke ground and forged a space for other aspiring volunteers in the neighborhood who were African American, including Coach Greg Harling, who arrived in 1994.
My best friend, Dave Harris. We lived across the street from each other on 12th and Lindley. We got to know each other. And I said, I think I would like to get into coaching. So Dave said, yeah, I would like to coach football also. He grew up playing football, baseball fanatic. So me and Dave went up and asked this coach, no, well, my staff is full. We went to this coach, no, my staff is full. Went to this coach, we're full. And one of the older guys that was there, Tippy, God rest his soul, said, why don't you check with, he could never say Ed last name right. Ed's name is Huntley. He said, go check with Huntley. So we said, okay. So we go over there, and this is like 94, and introduce ourselves, and I say, yeah, man, I'm looking to coach football and everything. How well? He said, sure.
And they allowed me to pick my own staff. And we had a guy like Greg, talking about this guy, Skip, named Dave Harris. And I went down and got the gentleman named Ray, who used to coach me at football. And by the time we looked up, every time somebody came up there, when those guys came up there, Greg and them, and they was like, oh man, we heard about the team, we come up there to help out. They would direct all the black guys straight to me. Oh, the guy ain't hungry down there trying to get staff and go over there. So by the time I had my staff together, we looked around, had a whole black staff, but everybody knew what to do. You know what I mean? We was all, you know what I mean, professional. We all knew our skills. I switched a couple of people around, and we went to about 4 championships and came out with the 2. Went to about 4, came out with 2. So we was teaching the kids, and we was winning.
Winning certainly helped to soothe some of the tensions between the white and black staff, but situations always bubbled up where racial animosity would rear its ugly head.
At the beginning, with us, with our Eagles, with a little sprinkle of the African Americans in there, we would always get heat from both sides. You know what I mean? When we went to play we call it the black teams, like Oak Lane, Mount Airy, Ivy Hill, they'd always look at us like, oh man, y'all over there playing with the white boys. And then when we go and play the white teams, you know, in Northampton, Southampton, then they look at us like, oh, look, they come up here. So at that point, we was kind of getting at both ends, but we just went play through it, you know.
It has always been typical for Coach Ed to try and rise above the noise and stick with his game plan even if the indignities were hard to ignore. Sometimes Coach Ed would be accused of favoritism by his white counterparts or parents because certain white players wouldn't get as much playing time as black players. But as he explains it, the motivations for such decisions weren't racially motivated.
We had this gentleman, his name was Jim, and white guy, and his mother worked at night, but she wanted to get him involved in basketball. And so she came there, he was my age group, so she came over there to sign him up. And we wound up, you know what I mean, signing him up. Because, you know, we try not to turn those kids away. We signed him up. He didn't really ever play ball before. He said, nah, I like it, but I never played a regulation ball. All right, come on, we're gonna do something with you. And we used to go to his house and pick him up, because like I said, his mother worked at night, so we would get him, scoop him up, check on him, make sure that he eats something for you, and they didn't. We make sure he got something to eat, bring him to practice. After practice, work with him. You know what I mean? He had a big body, so we just gave him one thing to do, just get a rebound. That's all we need you to do right now. And look for your guard, you know. So he went on in the season. He went from like 12th man. By the end of the season, he was playing like 8th man. You know, he was able to get on the court. So as we walked across to the Hammond baseball field where the kids played at over there, after they left the football field, they would go over there and play baseball. And one of the parents, one of the kids that I had that wasn't skilled, was telling the parent of the boy Jim that that's what she told me, that she called me racist and a bigot. Coach, yeah, he's a racist, he's a bigot. You know what I mean? He don't play the kids, you know that. And she had to ask her, Coach, yeah? Nah. And she explained all the stuff that I was doing with her son when I didn't have to. So now she looking crazy, like, what? What? Go get him. You know what? She said, yeah, my son love him. You know what I mean? He looked out for them, which we did with any kid. We didn't play that racist thing. We didn't isolate them because of his mother or father. If you couldn't play, we teach you. If you wasn't ready, we don't put you out there. We don't want to see nobody getting hurt.
Gradually, the demographics of the neighborhood changed, and the writing was on the wall. Coach Ed and Coach Greg share their recollections of what happened as the exodus of white coaches reached its apex in 1998.
So eventually, those guys started leaving. Like I said, one here, coach there. And the game started, the kids started changing. It was more of us than there was of them. So their final year there, we had just had our last carnival. At the end of every year, no matter what, it was always supposed to be $5,000 left for the startup for the carnival. Non-profit organization was at the end of the season wasn't supposed to have no money, but we always kept $5,000. That's what we needed to get the carnival to start it up with. So last year, we know they said about 32,000, I think it was. And at the end of the banquet, which we didn't understand, when they were ready to leave, they was like, yeah, come on down, man. You know what I mean? We want to put you up and let you run for president. I'm like, huh? Yeah, you know what I mean? Come on down here, you know what I mean? Because I had been around, you know what I mean? I was a commissioner one time, come to the meetings on the board of directors, but we didn't have no vote or nothing. So all of a sudden, they wanted me to be the president. I'm like, all right, so I talked to my boy, Vernon. I'm like, Vernon, what you think, man? He's like, come on, yeah, we can handle this, you know what I mean? We need to keep it going. So I said, all right. So I was voted in as the president. We had the carnival. So we had our last banquet. And we keep looking at them spending all this extra money. Then they went and rented a room for the night at this motel up the street. And the bar tab was about $4,500, $5,000. So everything was said and done, banquet over. I mean, so they like, all right, we out. Everybody left. All of them guys left. Only person that was around was the treasurer, because he couldn't leave because he had to sign the account over to us. So when we go to the bank, couldn't find out there was not no money in the bank. So he felt so bad, he gave us $1,500. So I was telling them, I said, if he gave us $1,500, imagine how much money he had. We owed everybody, because we used to get the raffles, trophies up at the banquet hall. They left us with a whole bill. So the story was, now I'm the president. All of my board of directors are African Americans. Now we sitting there, we get the board, go to the bank, change everything over, and we sit down in the hole and we looking. And I said, we like, ain't this something? You know what I mean? Another word, but they done took and cleaned us completely out and now left us in a hole of $10,000. Everybody we went to find out we owed them. So my thinking was, we didn't even have the $5,000 to start up the carnival or a fundraiser so we can raise money.
Once I got more involved in the organization, Ed became president, and 98. That's when the change happened. You had what they call white flight. Everybody moved. They all moved up to the Mayfair section. So we had to step up and we had to take charge. And what happened when they left us in the hole. And we didn't know that until we took over, had the books and everything. This June was the treasurer, Peace was the vice president, and things like that. So Ed took it upon himself and he told us, we cannot let this falter.
So I asked them, I said, listen, we can't let them have this organization fall apart on our watch. And being real, I said, they said, as soon as we give it to the blacks, look what happened. It shut down. And I asked the board of directors, I said, listen, this is what we need to do. I said, we got to raise that, at least try to get to the $5,000 so we can at least get the carnival in. Although it wasn't going to be as big as it used to be, it's going to be enough to help us offset some of these bills. And I said, I got the first $1,000. Anybody that contribute, I'm messing with it. You get 1% interest on your money if you put it up there. I said, man, but we can't let this stay fall. We cannot let them blame us for this organization no longer existing.
Ed took his vacation money that he would usually on his kids. My kids were in Catholic school, so I took their school tuition money, put in the pot. June put money in the pot. Dave took his bill money, put in the pot. And that's why I think that's what culminated in our friendship being so strong, because we came together as strangers from one goal. Let's make this happen.
So they was like, all right, okay, all right, Fred, all right. I got 300, I got 400. Somebody gave up the tuition for the kids' school, you know what I mean? So we was getting up, everybody did everything we had, and we came up with like 4,600. And I remember calling the guy, explaining to him what happened. I said, man, we got 4,600. You can get that first 400 off the top, but we need to do this in order to try to raise some money to keep this organization going. And he agreed. So he came, and we had the carnival, you know what I mean? And after we gave everybody their money back, we had about $6,000-$7,000 over.
I didn't tell my wife that I took the kids' school tuition money and put it in the pot. And we prayed that the carnival was a success, because if it failed, Ed would have to go to his family and explain to why they can't go on vacation. I have to explain to my wife why the school tuition is not paid for the kids. But everything went well. We were able to take care of the debt that we started with. Everybody got reimbursed. And that was the beginning of the bond with the organization as being strong.
What could have been an absolute disaster ended up being a trial by fire that sealed the bonds amongst the board members who stepped up in a big way and sacrificed their own well-being to stave off a collapse. Coach Ed often refers to them as the Sweet 11 from heaven. The new leadership was able to pay off the vendors, establish their own credit, and breathe a momentary sigh of relief.
And that's how we started with the organization, kept it on the flow. Things changed. It's not as well financially as it was back then, because like I said, we had more options about raising money. But we always do enough to keep it going. You know what I mean? The uniforms and then the kids with the trophies and the banquet. We just had a banquet. We had a banquet last year. But at the beginning, we tried to throw the banquet on our own. It got real expensive. So we decided, look, all of us can grill. We got our field, the basketball courts in the back. So for about 3 or 4 years, we took that's what we did. We went to the shopping, got some donations, and we got on the grill. Instead of having a banquet and going to Dugan's, where they was tearing it up every year, and they complained about, y'all got to control your kids. We went on the field. We had about 3 grills out there. We cooking everything, hot dogs, hamburgers. We had fish, we had macaroni salad, potato salad. We had, vegetarian beans. So for one, it was less than half the cost. And the kids got to eat, and we fed the parents all day long. And so that's what we did for a while, because we cut costs. And that's what we've been doing, finding ways to cut the costs. But the organization, as we see it, still one of the top ones out there.
Coach Greg rightly sings the praises of Coach Ed's all-encompassing leadership as he helped to navigate the Eagles through on-field and off-field adversity.
The leadership of Ed Huntley. Yeah, he's the quiet guy in the background. People don't know that he's the president. He has a saying that if there's a problem and it gets to me, everybody under me is being fired. So if you were in charge of football, you handle the football problems with the coaches or with parents or with kids. If you were in charge of the basketball program, that's your responsibility. Cheerleading, that's your responsibility. And that's the way that we worked. And it was smooth. And we were all of one mind, same accord. It's all about these kids at the end of the day. And I'm really proud of that.
A great example of how impactful the Olney Eagles were and continue to be on the lives of those who participated is embodied by Michael Crawford, a longtime Olney resident, business owner, and Eagles alum.
Olney Eagles. I'll tell you the story how I first started playing football. I remember sitting on the steps on Ruscombe Street, and the Olney Times had the advertisement, August 1st tryouts, Olney Eagles. And I'm like, oh, I want to play. All my friends like, we're going to practice. I had to tell my dad, like, yeah, I want to go to try out. But I was there from 87 to 93. I played for Olney Eagles. I kind of grew up in a program, hanging out at the field, knowing all the guys. So my thing was all day long, from the minute that I get out of bed, I'm going to the football field, and I'll be there all day. When I find Mikey, I was at the field, at the concession stand, cleaning the field for pretzels and popcorn or french fries. Playing there, it was great. I met so many friends that I still have to this day. And I actually just saw a guy last night when I went out to eat. He was on one of my team. He was like on my 75-pound team. So you have lifelong friends that you meet from playing youth football, stuff like that. And then some of the guys you might play at the collegiate, the high school level or the collegiate level that you grew up with. But growing up playing for Olney Eagles was amazing, man. It was well structured, well ran. And with my sons, I had my sons back there playing now. My son just won a championship. He played on the 6U, and he was only 4 years old at the time. But I had my other son playing at 4 for Olney Eagles. So it's like kind of a tradition, like, all right, you're going to play for Olney Eagles. Like, that's home base where we grew up at. And all my sons played there at one point in time for Olney Eagles.
Michael offers further testament to how impactful his coaches were on his life, especially Coach Ed.
Yep, Coach Ed coached me, and he'll tell you to this day, my name was Crawfish, they called me. He'll say to this day, oh yeah, Crawfish, I gave you your first pair of cleats. Because Cowdoor was right there. I remember my mom couldn't afford it. Registration back then was like $55. My mom couldn't afford that. My mom was paying the registration at the banquet in March. They was like, Miss Crawford, just keep the money. Like, I ended up getting a Don Bell Award my senior year, because I, grew up through the program and went to Mass Bomb and was a City All-Star, all Southeastern Pennsylvania, stuff like that. And it kind of that way of recognizing me as an outstanding student athlete over there. So Coach Greg coached me in basketball. I was stunk in basketball, but Coach Greg, I brought all the guys from high school to come play on Olney Eagles basketball team. And we were pretty good playing out at Northeast and at the Feltonville Rec Center, stuff like that.
Michael speaks to the indelible bonds of brotherhood that glues the former players together and how that resonates to this day in very tangible ways.
Coach Greg, it's the funny part about that, me and his son, we all used to work together and christen them over there because they worked for the city of Philadelphia. And then the late, what's his name, Stan, when I did my test, the jackhammer test, they gave my test for the city of Philadelphia. And they knew me from my son from playing, and Chris that's over there, my son and his son went to Emotep together. So, again, all about relationships, you know what I mean? All about relationships. Like, they never burn no bridge that you go across. You never know when you might have to go back across it again. So, growing up, playing with them coaches and working with some of these guys, it was like Chris was my supervisor. And now I do, the uniforms for Olney Eagles.
We will hear more from Michael and the story of his business, Hala Athletics Sports Apparel, in our next episode on Black entrepreneurship. His success story is one of many that embodies the investment of time and attention that the Olney Eagles staff poured into their players. Again, here's Coach Greg.
I had to explain to my kids They said, why are you always going up there to the field? And I said, well, you have me at home. You have me every day. You wake up, you know that I'm home or I'm at work, but I'm coming home. I said, some kids don't have that. So if we can give them 2 hours a day of our time just to, hey, how you doing in school? You know, it was a couple of times that the moms would call us when they kids are doing, oh, really? Okay. You could bring him to practice, but he won't play in the game. So we were a substitute parent, and we were respected by the mothers that like, wow, he's a good man. And we come from all backgrounds. We had city workers. I was a postal worker, school district employee. So we come from, like, you've seen these men, especially black men, who were fathers, who worked and then still gave time for other kids. And that's what it grew into. And I really am proud of that.
The work of mentoring and caring for the young is more important than ever. Youth are grappling with the gun violence epidemic, post-pandemic mental health challenges, cyberbullying, the list goes on. The Eagles' current Vice President and General Manager, Kaisha Taylor, provides insight into what the team and youth are confronting today.
Our slogan has always been Olney Eagles Youth Organization, where champions are made. But then there's also a bigger goal behind everything, promoting independence, helping some of our youth obtain some life skills. Right now, our biggest goal is to keep our youth off the street. There's so much going on in Philadelphia with all the violence and the gun violence. Our mission has kind of shifted to not only teaching the youth life skills, but teaching them survival and teaching them that there are alternative things besides getting involved in a lot of street activity and things to that sort. So we're trying to, right now, we are fighting in the fight of our lives to keep our youth alive. So it's just about, our main goal right now is to keep them safe, keep them off the street, allow them to be kids and enjoy life at their age.
Just like any volunteer member of the Eagles, Kaisha became a part of the leadership family simply by sticking around and pitching in when it was needed and when she was asked.
I became involved, let's say, when my daughter was about 3 years old. So she's 18 now, so I'm going to say for about the last 15 years. So I started out, when I first came aboard, my sons wanted to play football, getting involved in that. This was the first time my children had started being involved in sports and things like that. So I'm a very hands-on parent, so anything my kids do, I'm very involved in it, in everything. So I started out just as a parent, a walk-on parent, then as just being a parent, sitting on the sideline, kind of at first observing and watching things happen. The more and more that they saw me, the more and more they asked for volunteers. They needed this, they needed that, and I was always the one to jump in to help. I started finding myself there all the time at different events, whether it's just helping out with the concession stand, helping out with cheer, wherever they needed me to be or whatever they needed me to help out and do. I was the go-to person. You would never get a note from me. So I started out like that. That kind of started appreciating my volunteering and everything that I was doing. And so I became really close with Coach Dave, who's no longer with us, but he kind of took my kids under his wings. He treated them like they were we used to call it his grandchildren, but he really treated us like family. So we became really, really close. And at that time, he was in a position that I'm in now. He was the general manager of the organization before he passed away. So then he started talking to me about, hey, you're here, you're doing this. Why don't you become a board member? After a sufficient amount of time, they voted me in to become a board member. And then from that point on, I've been hands-on 365 days a year.
Kaisha's dedication to the well-being of the Eagles youth is not only a reflection of her role as a caring mother and volunteer, but in her chosen career as a childhood development specialist and licensed therapist. She works for the state of Pennsylvania's Office of Children, Youth and Families, overseeing the proper functioning of adoption, foster care, residential placements, and all other children's juveniles facilities. And as a therapist, she works with clients of all ages in various hospital and outpatient settings. All of this informs her view of the work with the Eagles.
So I have been, over the years, I had different visions for a program. to, first and foremost, to enhance, to gear towards the actual needs of the children and the families that utilize the recreation center and that community. I noticed things such as how the dynamics of the families that we served are shifting. I noticed all the recent gun violence and the loss and things like that, how it affecting our children and families. I'm also a therapist. So my next vision was to bring about and promote trauma awareness and get these kids and some of these families some of the help that they need. Because a lot of our youth have greatly been impacted by this violence. We have had youth that have aged out of our program that are no longer here due to gun violence. We have had siblings of some of our active youth that have lost their lives to gun violence. And you can see the effect that it has on the children and also the family. A lot of children, they don't know how to deal with trauma and grief. So of course, it brings out certain behaviors and things like that. It brings out anger and frustration because they don't know how to manage, they don't know how to cope. My goal is to open up and to expand like services for our children, get them the counseling and the therapy that they need.
In addition to the big picture concerns that she sees, Kaisha runs the cheer squad with the girls and coaches track and field.
One of the things that I do with the cheer program and with the girls is I always make sure that these young ladies are conducting themselves as young ladies. I give them an environment where they can just be that, just young ladies. There's no stigma to how you have to look, what you have to do, but it's all about just being a child and living in that moment. So those are big things for me because children's innocence are taken from them far too soon. They don't even have time to be children anymore. They're growing up too fast. They're missing those crucial moments and going through the actual stages for a child. So then by the time they'd have missed several of those stages, and then you wonder why they can't cope as teenagers or as young adults.
One thing that quickly becomes apparent when talking to the Eagles staff is the immense love and care being shared. It's the main currency that keeps getting handed down from one person to the next, from one generation to the next. Here again is Coach Ed.
And the reward we get when we see one of the kids, because we've been out there so long, and we've been through so many things. Most of us don't remember most of the kids. And you'll see them and they, hey, what's up, Coach Ed? How you doing? Hey, young man. You know, now when I say young man, I'm trying to figure out, where was he at? Like, hey, yeah, what you doing, man? I'm over here at the bank, I'm working here, this and that. And those are the things that we kind of like, all right, it was worth it, whatever we would do, because you're not going to get every kid not going to be successful. I mean, we had a couple of kids that got in trouble, but the majority of the kids that we went into and see, always respectful, always thanking us. And the true story was, we was in the mall, and we in line, and there's a couple of gentlemen that's in front of us. So I'm talking to my wife and I'm right out of that. And one of the gentlemen turned to me, he looked around, he said, like, Coach Ed? I'm like, yeah. He said, oh man, he said, I thought that was you. He said, I heard that voice, man. I was ready to get down and do 50 push-ups, man. That's our reflection I remember from when we was with you, man. And come to find out, you know what I mean, we talked to him and everything, and he got to actually own a little club over here on 5th and, I think it was at 5th and Holiday. He got a little club over there, and he was like, man, if you ever need somewhere to be at, man, just give me a call. Because he's staying in touch with my son. He played with my youngest son. And he's like, man, I heard that voice, man. I was ready to get down and do 50 push-ups, man. You took me way back. But those are the kind of things that we always say that makes it worth it. Yeah, so those are the things that make us proud of what we do and what actually make us keep doing them.
As we mentioned earlier, even though we chose to cover the Eagles' current leadership, we did hear from a couple of early leadership representatives who generously shared their fond memories. And what we received in return spoke to the warmth of nostalgia and deep bonds that are formed between fathers and sons, especially in the context of organized athletics. Michael Gallagher is the son of Frank Gallagher, one of the original Olney Eagles founders, and he left us a touching message that spoke to the complex ties that bind a person to their past and exemplifies the phrase, home is where the heart is.
My name's Mike Gallagher. I was a member of the Olney Eagles from 68 to around 73. I played. My father coached. He was a general manager. My mom helped coach the cheerleaders. And I have just great memories. My whole family spent years being involved with the Olney Eagles. Gave us something to do, kept us out of trouble, taught us how to work with others. And I came back and coached the little guys for about 2 years, probably in about 1984, 85, but it was time to move on and go to work and stuff. But my whole family was involved with the Olney Eagles. My Uncle Jack and Aunt Marge, they had no children, but Uncle Jack helped start the little guys. So my whole family came through the Olney Eagles. We played football, we played basketball, we ran track. Some of us were good, some of us weren't so good. And before my dad passed, we brought him back to the football field, see a game. He was pretty much going with dementia, so he kind of didn't know what was going on. But it was great to see how everybody came up to him and thanked him. And it made me and my brothers really, really proud that the people that are running it right now are doing the right thing and they're on the right course, and we support everybody that's doing it. Keep going. Can't wait to go to the next homecoming.
The trauma caused by the schism of white flight from the neighborhood in the late 1990s, while still indelibly marked on those who experienced it, seems to have lessened over time with the vindication of longevity for those who kept the flame alive, namely Coach Ed and the current Eagles family. If Mike Gallagher's message is any indication, a level of respect, if not grace, has been earned and bestowed upon them by their predecessors.
We would be mistaken to think that it's been smooth sailing ever since the Eagles overcame the rocky transition in 1998, but things have never come easy. The Olney Eagles now find themselves without a home base due to circumstances beyond their control. With great fanfare, the Olney Recreation Center was announced as the second site to be selected as part of the city's rebuild initiative in July of 2018. With funds from Mayor Jim Kenney's then newly enacted beverage tax, the arrival of upgraded indoor and outdoor facilities, long overdue, seemed imminent. Since then, the demolition of the building and the construction of the new one, which was to commence in 2020, has run into a myriad of delays, some related to the pandemic, some not. The excitement that came with the announcement has faded and been replaced with frustration.
The Olney Eagles have been displaced for almost 3 years. Their revenue has diminished by lack of concessions proceeds. Use of subpar facilities outside of the Olney neighborhood have been pale substitutes for home field advantage, and overall, the athletic program is under duress. The existential threat to the organization of not being able to come back to their house cannot be understated. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of daily media coverage of the latest shootings in Philadelphia, feeding a vicious loop of trauma for the city's young people and families. These are now additional hurdles for the Eagles to overcome. The caring voices of the Olney Eagles leadership are needed more than ever. We turn to Coach Ed for another story, to give us some measure of hope and inspiration.
And I'm going to give you another true story. We had a kid, he was like 11, 12, playing basketball, wanted to be tough like his brother was in jail, his other brother was a boxer, and they always had that attitude like he was going to be there. And we used to always tell him, man, our king. He said, man, you know, before you 12, 13, you can be in jail because you trying to do some things that, you know, you ain't supposed to be doing. And he looked at me because I always get my feet and my hands done. He said, oh, go ahead, Coach J, you ain't nothing but a little sissy anyway. You got a little polish on your hands and your nails. And I said, this is called personal hygiene. It ain't just about, you know, you got to take care of your bodies too. Oh, man, get out of here. So we go through everything. So later on, my sister-in-law and her son, who they played together, about 3-4 years later, runs into him at a basketball tournament. They may be like 16 now. And he talking to her and everything. He asked her, oh, dude, yeah, you ever see Coach Ed? She said, yeah, I see him all the time. Right next door and across the street there. He said, when you see him, tell him about this. And he was showing her his hands, how he goes and get manicured now. So I told her, oh, he's a tough guy, but somewhere along the line, he picked it up. He kind of got it. So that's why I be telling coaches, I said, man, When you got something positive to say to them kids, you make sure you say it and you leave it there. You know what I mean? Even though they're not found it right now, I mean, get out of it. As long as it's positive, you give it to them, leave it there. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they won't. But here's a little tough guy, you know what I mean, wound up going to get his hands done. And because he out, you know what I mean, I just talked to him about it. It was good. You know what I mean? And then again, those are the stories that make us proud of what we did and actually keep us going.
You can support the Olney Eagles Youth Organization by cash apping them at $ Olney Eagles Youth. That's $ OLNEY Eagles Youth. Next month, we return with stories of two successful minority-owned businesses in Olney. Michael Crawford's Holla Athletics and Ed Hips Foods. We'll hear about how they built their enterprises and how they have faced the challenges of being one of the few black entrepreneurs in their chosen sectors. See you then.
Audio Olney is a production of Olney Culture Lab of Culture Trust Greater Philadelphia in collaboration with Amber Art and Design. Narration and deep thoughts were provided by Linda Fernandez and Keir Johnston. Sound design and engineering by June Lopez. Research and script writing by Ambrose Liu. And additional support for this episode provided by Verissa McMickens Blair and Melissa Talley Palmer. Funding for Audio Olney is provided by Independence Public Media Foundation with additional support from William Penn Foundation and PICO.